Hi, I'm Karen. We're here at Montevilla Sewing Center, and today we're talking about the Baby Lock Verve. This is a machine that does both sewing and embroidery, and I'm showing you the sewing side because we're going to do some buttonholes today. Now, you can do a variety of buttonholes, and I'll show you how to get into that screen. You push this here, you find where it has buttonholes right here, and you've got 3 pages of different kinds of buttonholes that you can make in addition to mending stitches, bar tack, and eyelet. So I'm going to go back to page 1 here. I like having this square end buttonhole. It's the most common type of buttonhole, kind of universal. That's a picture of what it's actually going to look like. Now, let's say you have maybe thicker fabric or slightly more coarsely woven fabric. You can adjust that so you can make it so the stitches are further apart or closer together. Or if you have very fine fabric, you might want to have a narrower buttonhole and stitches closer together. So you can do that. See how that looks different there? Now let's say I'm making a whole bunch of buttonholes and I may not even get them all done today. I want to come back tomorrow, but I want to save these settings. There's a way to do that. That's this little guy right here. So I push that, and now even if I choose a different buttonhole or a completely different stitch, if I go back to that, it saves those stitch settings right there. Now, how do we put it back to default? Easy. Go right back up to here again. This is the button, that little kind of square with a chopped off corner. Put that back there. If we want to save it as default, push that button again. Okay. If I had simply pushed the default button, it would have put it back to default, but the next time I went to use it, it would have had my saved settings. So this is a nice little button to have. Even if you're doing, say, zigzag or something, you always consistently want your zigzag different than what's already in the machine. You can change that and save the settings with that. Okay, but we have it back to normal there, and I'm going to show you how to set up your machine now. Notice the foot it calls for, foot A. That's this one here. Now there is a little A there. It's kind of hard for you to see, but it's kind of a impressed A. And when you put this on your machine, make sure that you see that A right side up. If you put it on this way, and it is possible to put it on this way, it's not going to work, and your needle's going to hit the plastic right there. So you want to make sure that it's on correctly. If you want to, you can press the lockout key when you're changing your foot, if you feel like you need to do that. I usually use that for when I'm changing the needle because I really don't want the needle to go accidentally. Okay, and then you can also lift up your presser foot a little higher. Just lower it right down onto that bar like that. Take it out of the lockout. Now, notice there's no slit anywhere to pull your thread through, your top thread. So what I like to do is take a single stitch and then pull my fabric out of there, and that puts the thread right through there. Now, oh, I forgot to do something here. Let me do that again. I forgot to put my button in here. So this is going to measure your button and make a buttonhole the right length for your button. So I'm going to put my button right there, and that will determine this distance here. So I'm going to put this back in. Do that again where I'm take a single stitch. Okay. Pull my thread through. Oh, I didn't pull it in tight enough. There we go. Now, I've already taken 3 stitches out of my buttonhole, so I'm going to just reselect that buttonhole just to make sure I'm at the beginning. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is pull down this buttonhole lever. This buttonhole lever needs to be between those 2 plastic pieces on the buttonhole foot, and that, as the machine is moving through the certain parts of the buttonhole, the plastic on the foot will push against this buttonhole lever to tell the machine when to stop, do bar tack, when to do the other side of the buttonhole and do the bar tack, and then when to stop finally at the end. So when you are managing your big shirt or whatever, make sure that nothing hits this little thing in the back, that buttonhole lever in the back. Make sure that your fabric stays away from that. Now, the machine is going to pull your fabric through. You don't have to push or pull, just make sure that it's not dragging anywhere. Now, for our buttonhole, we're going to start with a line And this is going to be the center of my buttonhole. By the way, the pen I'm using is the Friction pen. I like it because if you touch your mark with a hot iron, the mark goes away, it disappears. Actually, it changes to a pale white is what it does. So it's wonderful for white or pastel, light colored fabrics. I suppose if you had a darker colored fabric, you could use like a chalk pen. Anything that erases completely. Okay, now we want the front of the buttonhole right there. That's going to be where we want it to start. Okay. Now I'm going to line these up, the marks that I made on the fabric with the buttonhole, the marks on the buttonhole foot. So the front to back, that's going to be the red line, that little red dot there. Or another way to think of it is right in the center of that little square. And then the side to side ones are going to be right even with like these green marks here. Now when you have your fabric under here, make sure that you haven't pushed it forward. There's a little bit of springiness on this foot. Also, you don't want to pull it like this. It needs to be just naturally the way it lands, like that. And also make sure that the edge of your fabric is parallel. I've got mine a little off. I'm going to kind of scoot it over there a little bit. Even if you have your marks matched up perfectly here, if you don't have it parallel here, your buttonhole is going to be off to the side a little bit. So we've got that ready to go. Now, I can push down on the foot control until it's done, or I could undo this, and notice it's green. That means I can push the start-stop button, and it will start on its own. Now, I've got it at a slower speed. I'm going to speed it up a little bit more there. Notice it did a straight stitch going back first and went forward. That way, it's doing the zigzag going the same direction on both sides of the buttonhole. And notice I had just a locking stitch right there at the end. Now, if I'd had this engaged, it would have also cut the thread at the end. Well, it didn't have that engaged, but it naturally had the locking stitch at the end. I didn't have to push that button. At this point, I can just do like that, and it's ready to do another buttonhole. I could have 20 buttonholes marked, and it would be just fine. Also, you don't need to worry about your threads. You just can cut them right down to the fabric. You don't have to tie anything off. Now this little last one, I usually leave those about 1/8 of an inch long, but that's on the back. Then you take your, take a pin, because we're going to cut that buttonhole, so take a pin and guard the end of your buttonhole, that bar tack at the end. Just kind of put the pin just a little inside the bar tack, because we're going to use the seam ripper to open that buttonhole. So I like to start down at the opposite end, go towards the pin, but not all the way up to the pin. Turn it over, reset my pin, and cut it from that end now. Now, whenever you're doing buttonholes, make sure you do a test buttonhole to make sure that the buttonhole is going to be the right length. That matters concerning, like if you have thick coat material, you may want to have your buttonhole a little bit longer. And I'll show you how to do that. If you need to have it longer, you can just push this out just a little bit more, maybe another click like that. And the button's going to be a little bit looser there, but your buttonhole will be a little bit longer. I'm going to leave it down where it was for now. Now that I've cut that, I'm going to take my button out, put the button through the buttonhole, and see how well that goes through there. A little bit fumbly today here. It's a little bit on the tight side, but I think it's because I didn't cut those threads. Those threads look kind of messy on the back, so I'm going to trim those out. Any threads that you see going from end to end, you want to make sure those are trimmed out, because if your button gets buttoned through those, that can cause pulls. Now, I've noticed that sometimes ready to wear, they don't trim those out very well, and I usually trim them out myself. That way, you can make your home sewn things look better than ready to wear, because you do the work. You do the work to make it beautiful. Okay, you want to have a little bit of resistance there, because you don't want to have your button unbuttoning by itself, but you also don't want to have to really work hard at buttoning your buttonhole. So this works just fine. I would leave it just like that. That's how you make buttonholes. Now you've got a variety of buttonholes. You can make the kind of buttonholes where you have like a shank type button. You think jeans buttons, they have a shank. In which case, if you put that kind of button in here, you turn it over so it's upside down so the shank is on the top. And then you can make a buttonhole like a keyhole buttonhole. And there is a tool in the toolkit so that you can actually cut the buttonhole, the keyhole part of the buttonhole, or if you make it eyelet, you can cut that eyelet. There's a hole punch in the toolkit. And I'm going to show you that when we get into the accessories video. I've made a lot of videos on this machine and on other machines here on our YouTube channel, so you can watch those, and I invite you to watch them so over and over if you need to. I hope this video has been helpful to you. If it has, give us a thumbs up. And if you have comments or questions, you can leave those in the area down below. Thanks for watching today. Bye.